But in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm here every single day. I care about this place. But kind of my motto in life is that you just have to do a little bit better than everyone else. And honestly, that's not really that hard. So I was like, I just have to do better than more. I don't want to say better, but more than the previous owner was doing. And it has to do better. Like that just makes sense. Like it has to do better. And I was like, I care so much about this. And again, I knew what the alternative was. So I didn't care. I was like, I will do anything, to do this. And, I paid myself just enough to pay my rent and buy groceries pretty much for the first year. And then we did, and then, so I took over January 1st, 2020, and then COVID hit in March.
In a corporate world where all employees have great leaders with no egos that create fun cultures where people can do their best work, the employees and companies thrive while doing great things for the customers, themselves, and each other.
Well, we know that rarely happens. I'm Jeff Pelaccio. I have been a leader for over 40 years for every t-shirt size company, from small 16 employees to extra large over 1 million. Please join me while I interview outstanding leaders that will share stories of great leadership and not so great. It will help you become a better leader while poking fun about all the crazy shit that happens in corporate America.
Hi, I'm Joe Deshawn, and welcome to the Corporate Couch with Jeff Pelaccio. Today's episode is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. Today, Jeff is interviewing Paige Pelaccio Meyer. Paige is a nurse turned med spa owner who started working at the Refresh Medical Spa in 2014 as a nurse injector. After spending 5 years of simultaneously working other jobs to keep afloat, she decided to purchase the business to grow and expand. Paige navigated a worldwide pandemic as a new business owner, and now, almost 5 years later, the business has grown more than 5 times. Refresh is preparing to open its new location, triple in size, to become the first luxury medical spa in Overland Park, Kansas. Paige started her college career at the University of Kansas and graduated from the University of St. Mary's with a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And Paige and Jeff hold a very special relationship, which you'll discover in a little bit. You can learn more about Paige at refreshhealthspa.com. Let's listen as Jeff talks to Paige.
Paige, welcome to the Corporate Couch today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, this is great because you are the guest that I've known the longest.
32 years.
32 years. Yeah, we were introduced, I'm trying to think. We were introduced by God.
Yes, we were.
Yeah, so full disclosure, we're recording on National Daughters Day 2024, and Paige is my daughter, so there you go. Yeah.
Works out.
So I've done the least prep for this interview out of all my 100+ guests. So
or you could argue the most prep.
I'd like that.
Yeah.
Well, let's start with a fun question, Paige.
Okay.
Who do you like better, your mom or your dad?
Dad.
Good answer. That's funny. The real fun question, although that one was fun. So people that even know you fairly well, Paige, what would surprise them about you?
Well, I think, of course, I'm going to work. Like my mind is like focused on work just because I'm sure that's the majority of what we're talking about. I think people that know me best and people that know me or see me from afar, I think probably think my life and my job is very fun. And of course it is, but just the stress and I guess hard work that goes on behind the scenes. So again, that's just my mind went directly to work. So I think that's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good. Although I know kind of the fun things you like doing growing up, let's tell the audience what was fun for you growing up. What did you love doing?
So, love reading. Always been a big reader. I honestly like being alone, although I'm a very social person. Enjoy being alone, enjoy reading. So a lot of like, activities by myself. Reading. I loved to draw, which I don't really do anymore, but artistic things like that. Um, Loved playing outside. I know kids don't do that as much anymore, but we, growing up, we loved playing outside. Traveling, we always traveled as a family a lot. Still love traveling.
And any aspirations growing up? Like, hey, when I'm a grown up, I want to be this.
So it's funny.
Besides marrying Derek Jeter.
Yeah, besides marrying Derek Jeter. Um, Aspirations. Well, it's funny, I was thinking just kind of my trajectory of like where I started to what I'm doing now is very different. But, I'm 32 years old. When I was growing up and people asked you what you wanted to be when you grew up, like an entrepreneur or a business owner wasn't really something that I'm not saying people didn't give you the option to do that, but it's just not something really that people talked about. I'm not saying that that's something that I aspired to be when I was younger, but when I look back at it, a lot of the things that I was doing, I think led up to this. For example, as you know, I would always like to, play pretend with friends and my sibling, my brother, and kind of like, I don't want to say boss people around, but it probably came off a little bossy, but kind of like manage things, whether it was like pretend restaurant or pretend classroom or things like that, where it's like now I see that that's very much still how I'm like managing people, managing a team, organizing things and getting things, an efficient process together to get things done. But no, what I aspired to be as a kid, I mean, I went back and forth, but like a veterinarian, because sometimes when I said that, people were like, a war vet. And I was like, no. Um, but I love animals. I thought a teacher for a little bit. A nurse kind of popped in there. I always heard that nurses had no problems getting jobs, and that sounded good to me. So I was kind of all over the place.
Yeah. Well, you came from two great organizers, your mom
Yes.
and myself, and your mom being better than I
Yeah. She's better than everyone at organizing.
am. Yeah, so you go to KU, and I can't remember. And what I loved about your college choice was,
Yeah.
I'll never forget this. So we traveled a lot back to New York to see
Mhm.
our New York family where I grew up, and we did go maybe your summer of your junior year. We went to Manhattan College for a college visit, but it was kind of like, I don't know if you were really even serious about going there, but you can tell me after I make this point.
Mhm.
But I remember, so you went there, and then you never wanted to see another college, and you basically said, "I'm going to go to KU." I go, "Paige, you never been on the campus. You want to go to the campus?" She goes, "No, I mean that's fine. I go, "What if you don't like it?" She goes, "You said, well, I don't know. I'll figure it out then." But I'm pretty sure. So you never even
Yeah.
visited the campus. I mean,
Yeah.
I think you went there for like a class trip
Totally.
or
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
museum. So I guess you had been there. But talk about your college choice and what was going through your mind at 18 years old.
Totally. Well, I remember you and I and my mom and kind of talking about the price difference too. But and of course, you guys were very supportive. I could go wherever, whatever. But my kind of thing was thinking about it realistically. And I know KU is a great college. So I'm like, okay, I can get, an education at either of these places. I think a little bit was fear of being in New York alone, even though I do have family there, but that would be a lot, starting, by myself on my own in a completely different state. And at the time I had a boyfriend who, you know, now that's completely irrelevant, but
We
I
won't
think,
mention him.
yeah, no. But I think it was just, and again, I think it's the stress of being so young and figuring out that, the pressure of what do you want to do the rest of your life? What's your degree? Where do you want to move? What, all these things. And I think that was, honestly, I think KU was my default, and I knew friends going there. And again, it's a good school. I knew I was going to get a good education. That wasn't like settling necessarily, but, I just think it was it was an easier choice for me. It really was, to
Yeah.
be honest.
And when you went there, were you, did you declare, did you know at that time you were going to
Yes, I
be a
was
nurse?
pre-nursing.
Okay,
Yes.
so you had a pre-nursing, yeah. So you
Well, because
decided,
in high school, again, you have to go in picking a degree,
yeah,
which is crazy, but
right. Oh yeah,
it was fine. And again, to me, and also growing up, we were a very health conscious household. So I was always interested in nutrition and the human body, biology, science was something that always interested me, math, and so again in high school they're like, oh, science and math are what you're good at, you should go into the medical field, or you should
right.
and but and again, what I mentioned before is, people always said, oh, if you're a nurse, you can get a job anywhere, you can get a job at any point. And that was also intriguing to me. But also the amount of things you could do with nursing is what I really liked. And I thought, if anything, I can learn about my own anatomy and, like biology and things like that. That was really interesting to me, as opposed to like, marketing or finance, which now I wish finance, I think I would have loved, just the math, aspect of it. But yeah, so that was just kind of I think the statistic is it's like kids in college change their degree on an average of 4 times while they're there. And I'm not surprised. And I stuck with something and I'm glad I did. But I think kids are really pigeonholed with that. You're kind of forced to.
Yeah, and it is crazy. I mean, I've interviewed close to 100 guests on the podcast, and it's people have changed majors, and
Yeah.
people have become CEOs that were East Asian history majors, like
Totally.
Harry
Yes.
Campbell
Yeah.
and Heidi Lehman, who I just published her. She was an art major at an all-female school, Hood College in Fredericksburg, Maryland, and then she became a tech startup founder. I mean, it's just
Right. It's
you
crazy.
you can't, it's a squiggly line, your career journey.
It
A
is.
squiggly line is your college journey. Like,
Yeah.
but occupations like nurse, lawyer, you have to figure it, because you're going to have to go to college. Like, I don't
Yeah.
believe college is for everyone today.
Yeah.
There's other ways to make money, and college is a lot of money, and is it worth the return on investment? So that it is interesting. What I loved about what you did with the nursing degree is like you chose not to take kind of I'll say the traditional occupational route after you graduating from University of St. Mary's with your nursing degree and passing the whatever.
NCLEX. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Your
thank you.
boards. Yeah.
The boards, yeah.
Yeah.
You decide, instead of going to a hospital, which, or a doctor's office, you wanted to pursue a different path. So when did you start thinking? And we'll talk about the path you took and when did you figure that was the way I should do it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to your point about college not being for everyone, I very much knew going into college that my nursing degree was a means to an end. I knew that I would not want to be working in a hospital, and I have the most respect for nurses who work in a hospital. That just was not my career path. And I think they're very, underpaid and underappreciated. But whether it is a college degree or if you are going to a trade school or just going straight, from high school to a job that you just want to, work your ass off at, I think it's that time of perseverance where there is a period of time where you are just either learning or putting in the time or getting the experience, and it's kind of going to suck. And I just always thought that. And not that there wasn't some good times, and of course I learned so much, but I knew that there was something else for me, but this is the step I needed to get there. So it's not that I necessarily knew what I wanted to do, but I was always interested in preventative health. I was always interested in, kind of the holistic health of it. So after I graduated from nursing school, I started working at Refresh, which I own now. So Refresh is a medical spa. And this is 2014. So in 2014, things were very different. Med spas have kind of boomed in the last 5 years, I would say, but it was very different. I was paid straight commission, which was interesting because I didn't have a client base. So, there were some days I would make $0. And there were other days I would make $800. It was just, you never knew. Or, I would have one appointment at 10 a.m. and then another one at 5. And then the 5 o'clock wouldn't show up and I would go, drive back. So, it was a very quick amount of time where I realized, okay, I need to get another job as well. So I started working at KU Integrative Medicine, which I is actually no longer there anymore. I don't think for the big industry and establishment that KU is, the integrative medicine portion was not making enough money for them. But the doctors were amazing. I mean, they would see clients for 2 hours. That would be kind of their starting point. They would recommend a lot of supplements, exercises, a lot of mental health things, which I loved. Now, being a nurse there, I was doing a lot of paperwork. I was doing a lot of charting. I was calling in a lot of prescriptions. To me, it just wasn't enough of a fulfilling role for me, although I do appreciate what they did. So again, I worked there for a couple of years.
Yeah, so you weren't challenged by it.
I was not challenged by it, no.
And the interesting part of that, we grew up kind of, or you grew up, well, I was growing up too still, in terms of holistic health, right? So,
yes,
Dr. Kelly Norcross, who, Kelly, here's a plug for you. He's 81st or 80th and state line.
Yeah.
He's a holistic chiropractor, basically. Traditional Chinese medicine, TCM, but more of that Eastern philosophy of becoming healthy versus Western philosophy of treating the illness, right? So you grew up in that environment, and it is sad because this makes so much sense to prevent things versus okay, people get diabetes, let's develop drugs to help them with their diabetes or high blood pressure versus let's prevent it from happening.
It's the core issue.
Talk about the path you took. When did you decide to kind of like, I want to work in a med spa being a nurse injector? When did that idea come to you?
Yeah, so that was definitely, even in college when I had like no money, I would always like want to save money for skincare, like expensive skincare. Let's be honest. I wasn't, shopping at CVS. That was always very interesting to me. I have a very, again, back to the holistic portion of it. I have a very like holistic view on what I see as beauty or beautiful. I think a lot of people that think of med spas, everyone has in mind that person that they know that is like way over injected and has huge lips and looks crazy. I look at it very differently. It's kind of like I had this vision of working at a place. I never thought about owning it, honestly. Working at a place where people would come in and, they're like family to you. They tell you, the things that are bothering them, and I can fix that. And it's like Botox and fillers, people think about that, but there's a lot of other things, medical grade skincare, lasers, facials, there's body contouring. There's a lot of other things that if someone just has one insecurity that's really bothering them, and it doesn't even, no one else really notices it, but it can make them feel better about themselves. I think that makes a person beautiful is when they feel good about themselves and they kind of radiate that beauty. Like, I don't know if this is just something I have in mind or everyone thinks this, but we all know that person who's like chronically like complaining and negative and just kind of like a gross outlook on life. And they kind of like have this like constant frown on their face. They have these lines because they're just always like crabby and cranky. And I just see like, people that are, and I know this is so cliche, but it's like, there's a saying that's like, oh, the nice girls are the prettiest or something, but it's really true when you are a kind person and you radiate happiness and fulfillment. And, I think those people are beautiful. So it's just kind of helping people get there. And it's not even necessarily what we're selling, but it's the community aspect of it, that people feel comfortable coming to us. There's a lot of, ugly things in this industry, people just trying to sell, and make money and take advantage of people. Or can it be more so like a community, like a club where people just come in and again feel good about themselves, and it's kind of their break from their job, their family, their responsibilities, and that's how I always saw it.
Yeah, and I think as what I tell recent college graduates, it's hard to have that long-term thinking, the long game in mind when you graduate from college. I think you did, which was phenomenal. But it also resulted, and again, I think having interviewed a lot of people, you're in the minority of having that vision of what you wanted to do, and that actually led to you getting a refresh job. So I'm meeting with
Yep.
my friend Tracy Hopper, who's the
Yep. Hmm.
COO of MedTrack.
Yep.
And she said, how's, what's Paige going to do? And this was probably the spring semester of your
20.
senior
Yeah.
year.
Yeah.
And I said, well, she doesn't want to take the traditional route.
Yeah.
She wants to be like a nurse injector. And her eyes lit up, Tracy's,
Hmm.
and she goes, well, Angela's works at Refresh Med Spa, and Angela Garner was her friend.
Yep.
And that set up a meeting between you and Angela, who's the
Yeah.
owner. And I didn't even know Angela was a doctor.
Yeah.
I had only met her a couple times.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
so anyhow, and it's about the power of relationships, and and again, but just having some idea, and you have to put thought into it, right?
Mhm.
And obviously you did that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think
Yeah.
again, it's staying the course of what you want to do, and knowing that some things are going to be a means to an end, and other things, and you'll eventually get there if you try.
Right. Yeah, so literally you've been with Refresh since you graduated
Yeah.
nursing school. So
2014. Yeah.
yeah, so it's been a 10-year run, but like you said, it was part-time. You had to figure out how to pay bills and get high-end skincare. You probably were getting a good discount at Refresh, hopefully, but
Yes,
um,
definitely. Yes. Yeah.
so the KU integrated medicine job, you're not fulfilled,
Yeah.
and then you took a kind of a career pivot a little bit. So to
Mhm.
talk about your where'd you go after that?
Yeah, so well, I actually started getting my master's in nursing research. I thought that would, again, I kept trying all these things. I thought that would pull me closer to being like, I didn't really want to be a doctor, and I didn't want to go through all the schooling. I'm going to be honest. I'm not the best student. I'm the kind of person who has to try really hard to get B's. I'm not. I will, work and I'll put out the great effort, but as far as schooling, sitting there and studying is not my thing. So I rather get the experience and do it. So started nursing research thinking, okay, I would like to be in kind of the process of doing these studies of like your example with diabetes. Okay, how do we get rid of diabetes, or at least lower the symptoms with, lifestyle, exercise, things like that. And so nursing research is kind of what took me there. And then, I'm always like looking at jobs and looking at opportunities, and a job at the KU Research Institute came up. And so I decided to try that out. The money was great because what it was is, and again, I, in my mind, I was involved in these cool cutting edge studies and things like that. And really what it was is I was writing consent forms, and it was a lot of trial drugs, which ended up being a weird kind of ethical battle for me, because it was like the people that got into these studies were people that didn't have the money, and they couldn't afford medication. So this was kind of their last, stitch effort to help whatever ailment they had. So again, not fulfilling. But that was kind of, I think, my first, that was an office job. That was the only office job I had, and I only worked there a year, but I learned a lot. Just about the corporate world and things like that. And then that was definitely not fulfilling to me. So then I quit to go refresh full time. In the process there, I had gotten actually my yoga teacher training certification. So I was also teaching yoga, but I was like, that was the first job I had that I really disliked. And I could see that with my health, with my relationship, it just it did not suit me well. And so I'm like, I will do anything to make this refresh job work because it's actually something I enjoy doing. And so I'm going to go back to that, and it's not an option for me to fail anymore because this is my alternative and this is not what I want. So
Yeah. Well, what I love about that too is like you're in your 20s and you need to try stuff out, right? So
yeah, you
you're
do.
not,
Oh, totally.
and
Absolutely.
because it's important to know what you don't want to do,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I love that. So what year was that you went to refresh full time? Do you remember?
I think 2018.
Okay. So now you're back, you're at refresh. Now it's full time. So that's good. So you
Yeah.
probably the income is a little better and you've
Yeah.
decided this is my path.
Hmm.
Uh, when did you start thinking about, like I want to buy refresh someday?
Late 2018, went full time at Refresh, was teaching yoga classes, which I also loved. That clearly wasn't paying the bills, but I did love doing that. Um, I then early 2019 actually got divorced. And so then I was on a whole nother, like, very motivated trajectory where I'm like, well, it's just my income now. I was loving working at Refresh. I will say, our previous owner, like you said, she was a doctor. She did have another job. She worked in hospice. Um, so she, didn't really have the time and resources to put into Refresh. So I was paying for a lot of like continuing education for myself. And I was kind of having trouble getting the resources that I needed to kind of, elevate my career there. And so I think it was September of 2019. I texted her, and because again, back to what we were saying, it was a fulfilling job to me, but I just felt like I could do so much more. And I loved Refresh. I had put in at that point 5 years there. I really cared about it. I was very close with my coworkers who also were having the same issues as me, as in they couldn't advance their career. They were struggling with the support and structure. And I was like, I've been here for 5 years. I feel like I could really put in more to this. So again, in September, I texted our owner just saying, hey, would you want to go get drinks or something like that? I would love to just chat with you about some things. And she actually texted me back saying, I would love to do that. I'm on my way to Salt Lake City. Her youngest son was in a coma. And so I was like, oh my God, like, go do that. Don't even worry. Like, don't even, worry about me. So then that kind of got put on the back burner because he ended up passing, unfortunately. And so I was just like, whatever, this is my job. Maybe we'll address this some other time. But then actually she reached out to me the next month. So we went out to drinks. She said, I just need to simplify my life a little bit. This recent, tragedy really hit me, of course, as it does. I mean, I can't even imagine. But she kind of wanted to clear her plate of some things in her life. And so she basically approached me about buying Refresh. And at that point, it was tough because it was like mid-October, and she wanted me to take over January 1st. Obviously, tax purposes, that makes the most sense. So I really had to struggle to kind of do my due diligence, which again, at the time, I was 27 years old. I had a nursing degree. I didn't even know what due diligence was. Like, I literally Googled it when everyone's like, you need to do, and I was like, I don't know what that even means. I just had this flashback to, like, you and I went to who was the guy we went to where we brought all of the paperwork and like tax returns. And this guy was like, no, this business is like a money pit. And then you and I like went and got martinis at like 2 p.m. Do you remember this?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, that's right. Who was that guy? Was he
Yeah,
a
I can't
business
remember
broker? Was he a business
I think
broker that
so.
sold?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And then so I kind of went back to Angela about it, and I was like, listen, like, this place is in so much debt. And she was like, no, and not to give away too much of her.
Right.
This is her story to tell, but
Yeah.
as most business owners know, if you know accounting in the least bit, business owners, it behooves you to not show that you've made a profit.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be honest.
Right.
So, anyway, there was a lot of, I don't know what was going on, but anyway, where it came down to, and my now husband, I was dating him at the time. We kind of talked about it, and I'm here to be totally transparent. The sale price was $250,000, and we were making about a little south of 500,000 in revenue a year. Not much. I mean, that's not a lot. Yeah. But in my mind, I was like, okay, I'm here every single day. I care about this place. But kind of my motto in life is that you just have to do a little bit better than everyone else. And honestly, that's not really that hard. So I was like, I just have to do better than more. I don't want to say better, but more than the previous owner was doing. And it has to do better. Like that just makes sense. Like it has to do better. And I was like, I care so much about this. And again, I knew what the alternative was. So I didn't care. I was like, I will do anything, to do this. And, I paid myself just enough to pay my rent and buy groceries pretty much for the first year. And then we did, and then, so I took over January 1st, 2020, and then COVID hit in March.
Today's podcast is brought to you by Exec HQ, a C-suite fractional firm providing elite executives for your business. If you're having challenges taking your business to the next level, if you want to augment your leadership team, or prepare your company for increased growth, profitability, and an eventual successful exit, we have seasoned executives from every C-suite position ensuring a perfect fit for your needs and the dynamics of your industry. You will work with senior leaders who like to roll up their sleeves while checking their egos at the door. They can help your business in specific services such as strategic planning, executive leadership coaching, financial management, corporate governance, marketing, sales management, and many other advisory solutions vital to your business success. That's exechq.com. To learn more, go to exechq.com or email Jeff Pelaccio at jeff.pelaccio@exechq.com.
So remarkable. You're 20. You were, well, on January 1st, you were 27 still.
Yes, and then during COVID, I was 28.
February.
Yes.
So so you own the business for, since January, and then I don't know when the edict took effect, but March something.
It was the Monday after. I feel like it was like March 19th. It was like, I think St. Patty's Day was on like a Saturday, and it was like that Monday or Tuesday or something we closed. And then we were closed for 2 months. We were closed until the middle of May.
Yeah, so you're a new business owner. You're now 28 years old.
I just done a bunch of renovations too. I did like $30,000 of renovations to completely renovate the place in January. And honestly, so I could not get any loans because I was a brand new business owner, and they're like, you've owned a business for like 8 weeks. Like, we're not giving you anything. So I could not get any loans. Put all my girls on unemployment, which, as most people know, that wasn't a super bad deal. So I, essentially let them all go. Then what I did was I sent out an email to our whole database saying, if you want any product, I'll drive it to your house. We were doing this weight loss program called HCG back in the day. We don't do it anymore, and a lot of places don't. Everyone has Ozempic now, but it was something similar. So I would deliver these injections for people. They would go on these programs, and that's how it was anyway. When people came in, is that we would just send them home with them. So that wasn't that big of a deal. But basically, honestly, I kind of broke even. Because what people don't understand about med spas is, they make money, but the costs are so expensive. The product, the Botox, the fillers, all these things are so expensive, and obviously payroll. So without all of that, I honestly kind of stayed at a pretty consistent basis, which is interesting. But yeah, it was a very interesting time, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's remarkable. So, I mean, how did you manage that stress in your life at that point?
Great question. I did a lot of reading, and I read actually, the book Ryan Holiday, which one was it? The ego
The
is
obstacle is the way, that one?
it was ego is the enemy, which
Okay.
obstacle is the way, which would have been a better one at the time. But I would do a lot of reading. I would prepare anything I could for when we opened back up. I did a lot of like marketing at the time. Again, I put together little like at home care kits. We had this facial at the time. It was called the Fire and Ice Facial. So what I did was I would put the products in small little containers and kind of sell a one, like you can do this at home type of thing, which we had never done before. Then I would really try to like take care of myself. I would work out every day. I would go on walks, try to catch up on sleep, because at that time, I wasn't sleeping at all. And just kind of know that if I can make it through this, I can make it through anything in the business, because this has to be the worst. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then sometimes me and my coworkers would meet up at Refresh and give each other treatments, which was fun.
Yeah. Interesting.
I say coworkers, my employees, but yeah.
I do remember January of 2020, it was one time, or maybe it was December, you didn't take your father's advice, which was probably was a great decision. I remember you wanted to have an open house to show you the new owner, and you were just going crazy to make sure it was going to happen in mid-January. And I was like, Paige, you don't need to do it now. Just wait, and it was great that you did do it.
It was
because
great.
You made some,
money,
money, a lot of money
Yes.
that for the open house. So, way to not listen to your dad, Paige.
Yeah, that was helpful. Yeah.
Tell the listeners what it was like in terms of, so, it's always interesting for a new leader, new manager, as one day you're peers with your coworkers, and then you're their boss. Not only boss, but owner of the business. Like, what was going through your mind, and how did you manage that transition? Because it is different.
I will say I managed it extremely poor. That's probably the hardest thing for me as a business owner. One, being a woman and employing all females. So, and that's just kind of how the industry is. I've honestly had like 2 males even apply. So that's just kind of how it is. But, to me, and this is one of the reasons I wanted to become a nurse as well. I care about people so much. Like sometimes I would argue too much. And I want, actually to this day, so I've owned Refresh. It's coming up on my 6th year, but it's been 5 years. I'm still not the highest paid person there, and I've never been. And that's partly it's definitely my fault. And it's also because I like to put money back into the business as well. So I could change that. Again, that's my fault, but I really do care about the women that I employ. And it's extremely important to me that they can make a living, at Refresh, that they can come into a positive work environment, because I know that's also, few and far between. And for them to have a supportive boss. Unfortunately, what I've learned is I do have to keep that separate, being a boss versus being a friend. And it's one thing to be a friend, and then it's one thing to just be human and supportive. And you can do that. You can be a boss. It's kind of like, if any parents out there, and I have an 8-month-old, so I'm not saying, I have experience in this, but I do have parents, obviously. It's like those parents when you're in high school that are like too friendly with their kids, and either, let them drink or let them get away with stuff. And the kids think it's fun at first, but then there's always like weird boundaries. And then, then the kids don't feel safe. They don't feel comfortable a lot of the times. And structure really does work. And so I've learned the hard way. I really have. I think, because I think I'm putting so much into these people, and then I've really gotten taken advantage of. But again, I have myself to blame for that, because I let it happen. So I have gotten better at drawing, clear boundaries, and you can be supportive and you can be empathetic, but still hold structure and boundaries, and as well as respect people and what they need. So Yeah, it's been tough. I will say that's probably my biggest downfall.
And we also employ a family member.
I also employ a family member, and I want to give her a shout out because her name's Mac. She's my head nurse, my lead nurse. She has worked for me for what, so almost 4 years, and I have to give her credit because she has never asked me to be treated differently. She's never crossed a line or a boundary. Hasn't treated me differently. And I for a long time I was a nurse, manager, owner, and now I have a manager. So the girls can go through the manager too, which helps. It's kind of like a separation. But yeah, Mac has never, she is the one who has made that possible. And we had a conversation, we had a very, deep conversation about that before I hired her, because I knew she was going to be a good employee, but I was just like, we can never let this, get in between us. So that was tough, but she's so great. So I give that.
Yeah, and I think that, that's what I tell people too, having had friends work for me. It's just, you really have to set boundaries of here's the friendship part of it and here's the work part of it. So, I mean, and it's a journey for sure. Yeah. And it's definitely hard when you're a coworker, on this day, and then the next day you become their boss. So I mean, it's hard, and it's definitely a journey. And you were very young to go through that.
Oh, I was the youngest one.
Yeah.
That's the other whole thing. Yeah, I was the youngest one. So people didn't like that either. And it started off as this cool thing, like, oh, you can make all these changes because you know what we want. And I did make those changes, but then, it gets I don't want to say a power struggle because I'm not, but it's an ego thing, and it's a lot. There's a lot that goes into it.
Let's just get this on record. Am I a regular Botox customer for you? Okay.
No, I know people might think so, but no.
Oh, you're breaking HIPAA. Sorry. Well, because it's so funny when I meet a new person, as I do a lot of connecting in the community. Some of them will ask, so, what do your children do? And when I say you own a refresh, a med spa, they look immediately at my forehead. I mean, 100% of them. Yeah, so it's all good.
That's actually, that made me think of this. Something that people would be surprised about. I mean, I've never had filler before.
Oh, there you go. Wow.
That would, I think, surprise a lot of people. So
yeah. Well, you got the Pelaccio lips, so there
you go.
Exactly.
Yes. Yeah. Don't need filler in these babies. Yeah.
So what's fun going on at Refresh right now that you would like to share?
We have a lot of fun things going on. We are currently expanding. So instead of, and I debated this for a while, but instead of opening a second location, we are opening a new location that's much bigger. It's 3 times the size. So it's only 2 blocks away from where we are now. We are currently renovating that space and very excited. It's going to be, very much a luxury experience, a luxury med spa. And with that, we are adding on a few new things that are exclusive to Refresh that we've been working on that we're really excited to roll out. But yeah, I'm just excited to have a bigger space. We are very much cramped right now, and be able to serve more of our community with that space. And kind of, we're 2 blocks away, but it does feel like a very different location. And so I'm excited to get to know some of the neighbors over there, some of the people and things like that. So very excited for that.
Yeah. And that's anticipated December of 2024 ish.
Yeah, we got to be out by the first of the year. So it's happening. Okay. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
Paige, I love to help 2 groups of people on the podcast with leadership advice from great people like yourself. So that first group is that recent college graduate as they're trying to get that first job and start their professional journey. What advice would you have for them?
Okay, so this just popped into my head. I don't even remember where I heard this, but it's kind of like the 5 steps or progression to success. The first one is you feel invisible. And that's, for me personally, that was like in nursing school when I'm like, yeah, I want to be a nurse injector. People are like, what the hell is that? So that's the first step, is you feel invisible. The second step is you get made fun of. People make fun of you for what you're doing. And, that's a hard step to get past. You got to believe in yourself, and you have to have the drive and the motivation to get past that. The third is people criticize you. Definitely, again, that's a point of, to me, that's a sign you're doing well, because people are kind of, on the edge of their seat being like, okay, what is this person doing? The fourth is you reach a point of success and you get taken advantage of. So whether that's an employee, whether that's a friend, whether that's a family member, that's the fourth. And then the fifth is you get to that point of success where you meet other people that have been through the same, kind of process and steps that you have, and you get to connect with them and learn from them and, bounce ideas off them. Or again, I think the best way to put it is you just don't feel so alone. And those people are kind of the people you keep close in your circle. But I just think that progression is really important because it's hard, and it's normal to do things that people are like, what are you doing? And you just have to push past that. So I think when you're young, if you have an inkling of what you want to do, or if you have a journey a road you want to go down, just keep at that and remember those steps, and to know that when you're hitting those things, it's normal.
Yeah, and to have the long game in mind and think that your first job out of college is where you should be, whether it's God or the universe, and it's not going to be your last job, and you may not ever do that thing what you're doing again, but
you're never you're never too good for any job, because any job, if you're willing to learn from it, you will. And so any job is beneficial.
The other group I'd love to help is, once people become, a leader in terms of, anyone can be a leader, whether you have a team under you or don't. But once you're responsible for a group of people on the org chart, or in your case, being the owner, what advice would you have for them in terms of as they begin their leadership journey and how to approach it?
My first thing is be a human. You can get really caught up in the numbers and the stats and goals and Q1 versus Q3 and, all these things. And for me recently, with this move, I had to get a loan from the bank. And I mean, the process of, trying to justify and explain every single thing I've done, or why is your payroll more, but your revenue's not? And I'm like, I pay people too much. Like, you have to justify all those things. But again, just being a human at the end of the day, you'll always be ahead, because these people are your front line, and you need them, and we are a team, and we can't do it without our front desk, we can't do it without our service provider, we can't do it with our manager, our marketing team. And then the only other thing I would say is, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but being a leader is extremely lonely. And again, I do not mean that in a bad way, but there's that book, Leaders Eat Last. That's true. You have to worry about everyone else pretty much. At the end of the day, one of my nurse might be, worried about herself. And I'm like, I'm worried about every single one of you. And again, I wouldn't change that for the world. It's just not for everyone, but, it's a lonely job, but it's worth it. If it's what it's meant for you.
100%. Paige, I'm so happy you came on the corporate couch this morning, and I will.
Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, I will. I should have had you on sooner, but I will say is being a dad and a bonus dad has been the greatest honor of my life. So thank you.
Thank you. I've learned a lot from you.
Well, in talking to Paige, I obviously met her the moment she was born. I was actually there, being her father. So, Joe, I'm actually going to pass this one to you first, because I'm so biased, and I'm so a proud dad that I'm going to say, Joe, what was your thoughts on my conversation with Paige?
Oh man, I'm honored and I'm thrilled. She is such a delight, and it was a delightful interview. You have every reason in the world to be just incredibly proud of her. You've done well. But I knew a little bit about what she was up to, but I didn't know her whole story. It's an interesting zigzag again through her career. knowing that you want to be a nurse, but not really a nurse. It was, and so she ended up being something else. Going from that to buying the company, not just working for the company and being a manager of the company, and buying the company, and you're investing in it. Very interesting story. I don't think we've ever had, thinking back on, I don't think we've ever had a guest on the corporate couch that actually bought the company that he was working for.
Right.
We've had a couple that bought companies, but not while they were an employee. And she talked about, you and her talked about towards the end, the interesting relationship that causes with the other workers in the company, because you start out, you're a peer of that person. And then it's not that you're promoted to being in their boss, it's you're now the owner of the company. And that would be a very interesting relationship to manage. I had something similar to that. I was working on a team of people. Our boss got fired, and I went in and took his job. So now I ended up being from a peer to all the people to the manager of all these people and the head of the department. And I sucked at it. It was terrible. Because I considered myself to be a project manager first, and these other people were just people that would help me complete this project that we were doing. It was years before I ever thought about being a leader and actually leading people and leading individuals. I never thought about that. And Paige was honest to say that she had difficulty with that at first, but apparently she's grown through that, because apparently the company's doing very well and talking about opening a new location and thriving. And I think she's going to go places if she is. She's a beautiful young woman to start with right now. In 20, 30 years from now, we can interview her, and I think that we're going to find that she has been very, very successful in her business. And so you have every reason to be incredibly proud of her.
That's very nice, Joe. Thank you for that. Yeah, a couple things from me. And one, I've always known about this in terms of, she went to school to be a nurse, but didn't want to, was adamant about not going the traditional route of working in a hospital or a doctor's office. I always supported her for that. It was very specific, and I actually loved the focus, and that focus led her through a conversation with a friend of ours that we worked together at Sprint PCS, Tracy Hopper, connected Paige to the woman that owned Refresh Med Spa, who was a very close friend of Tracy's. And they met. Paige started working there part-time during her last semester in nursing school. And so that, I thought, I loved the focus. And yes, those are not as plentiful jobs, but if you're focused on what you want to get, it's a great strategy. The other one, which I'm going to say, I don't remember it, but it was basically going to nursing school, and even the 2 years at KU, University of Kansas, to prep to go to nursing school. It wasn't her favorite thing, but it's almost like, and I don't know if there's a book of this tale, but she embraced the suck, meaning like it wasn't her favorite thing, biology and all that, but she knew she had to do it to get the degree, to pass the boards, to be a nurse, to become a nurse injector at a med spa. And then the other thing, I'm so proud of her, and she buys a business and finalizes it in December of 2019, becomes owner on January 1st of 2020, and then on March, 19th, 18th, 20th, she has to close down for 2 months. The first time she's owned the business, and I remember how stressed she was, and she thought about ways to make money during that time, and made it all work out. And so that was almost now 5 years ago that all transpired. So yeah, she's done very well, and very proud of her, of course.
Yeah, that's neat. It's ironic that a lot of businesses came out of the COVID experience as a better, stronger business, right? Because it forced them, when they closed their doors or had to change the method of doing business or something, forced them to look at what they were doing. And we have a lot of home food delivery now that we probably wouldn't have had
Right.
if it wasn't for COVID. And we have a lot of. She was talking about delivering medications personally to homes, and that probably wouldn't have happened if we
Right.
hadn't. So that doesn't mean that COVID's a good thing, because
No.
obviously it was very tragic, and I lost a couple of really close friends to COVID very tragically. But it is possible that some good things can come out of it, and certainly some businesses came out of it much better than how they went into it, and they are in a better position now than what they would have been if they hadn't gone through it.
Yeah. Joe, what would you like to impart on our audience today based on my conversation with Paige?
We're going back to that great philosopher, Stephen Wright. And Stephen one time said, somebody asked me if I were stranded on a desert island, what book would I bring? The answer is How to Build a Boat.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Corporate Couch. If you enjoy the podcast, I would love for you to take 2 minutes out of your day to rate us 5 stars and write a review. Please join me next week to learn from another great leader sharing their professional journey and insights.